Right, good morning to everyone once again. Today is our last lesson for the year, 2017. And it is good to end the year with teaching on faith. It's a very beautiful, in some sense humorous story of a woman of faith, the Brāhmiṇī Dhananjani. Brāhmiṇī Dhanañjānī Sutta, S 7.1. The Brāhmiṇī Dhananjani discourse. Here the theme is rather interesting. Killing what benefits us? This is actually on account of the husband who asked the Buddha a few trick questions. And there's also a very nice coincidence, because it says here, this translation commemorates the adoption of 25th December of Buddhist Renewal Day as Buddhist Renewal Day to reflect on the blessings of the three jewels. This was in 2007. Okay? Anyway, this announcement is made 2014. So this is also the last study for the year. We have to make extra effort to basically be sensible, not to be dominated by another culture. Again, this is where intelligent traveling is very useful. When you go overseas, you begin to see a sense of civility and also dedication. For example, if you meet Buddhists overseas, Western Buddhists especially, they really take Buddhism seriously in many ways. At the same time, they are not in the habit of talking down to other religions, although they're very honest when they discuss religion. Here we tend to be very strange in our approach. Certain things we can't say, certain things we say in a certain way. And this is the time of the year when you see a very odd kind of behavior among some local Buddhists. They actually greet each other, Merry Christmas, although we don't celebrate Christmas. So this is a sign of secularization, maybe, but it's rather it's a sign that of a dominant culture. As you know, Singapore, founded in 1819 by Stanford Raffles, was a British colony, and Christianity is gaining strength even today. So a lot of people see this as a dominant culture, so there are all these benefits of kind of tagging yourself with a dominant culture in terms of worldly success. And we also get caught up with the dominant culture. And Christmas is a very great commercial holiday. People make a lot of money. Well, my point is, as Buddhists, it's okay to greet people who celebrate Christmas, to greet them. That really is quite fine. It's just that it makes good sense. If we are Buddhists, we do not, especially if we are monks, we do not greet other Buddhists Merry Christmas, which doesn't make sense. So these are little things which are very important. Perhaps by the next generation, people will be more sensible, more dedicated to Buddhism, especially in our culture. So this sutta is in a sense about faith in the Buddha Dharma. It's a very beautiful story of this woman who, of course, with that kind of faith, we know she must have attained some level of the path. In fact, she's a stream winner. We're not told exactly how she became a stream winner. Maybe somewhere in the commentaries on some suttas it must have been mentioned, but at this point I have no information yet. So now she belongs to this clan, the Dhananjani, which is said to be the highest of the Brahmin clans. Okay? And she has this habit of uttering an udana, of basically making an utterance. No? Whenever she stumbles or she drops something, she will say Namo Tassa 3 times. Not just once, but 3 times. And this really annoys the husband, who is a very strict Brahmin. So the husband actually threatened her in very strong words. You can see the words, it's mentioned in the commentary on the very first page here, page 47. So the husband holds a knife, a sharp curved knife at her. The husband was so fed up with her. It says, with this round-headed knife, Mandalagra, from head to foot, I will cut you up like a bamboo shoot if you do not do as I wish. If you say Buddha, if you utter Dhamma, if you pray Sangha, they will live or they will prosper in my house. Right? So it says, you better don't say all these words, no? Actually, he was a bit worried because he's going to have this big gathering of other Brahmins. These are like the lords in Robin Hood's time, if you like. So he says, okay, you better do not say this word, okay, when these Brahmins are present. You know? But what does she reply? Okay, this is what she says, you know. Well, the sutta continues. The sutta says, the commentary rather, it says, but the noble disciple, so she's a noble disciple, in other words, she's a Srimana, remain unshaken like the earth itself, unmoved like Mount Sineru. Then she says this to him. So this is the reply to the husband. She says, if all my limbs, or you can translate it as, if limb by limb, me you were to cut up, Brahmin, as you wish, never will I ever forsake the teachings of the Supreme Buddha. Right? So this is called sort of a lion roar, if you like. Right? So she's saying, you can do what you like with this body. And then she continues and says, as a noble torchbearer am I, not one to obstruct the champion of the Sakyas. A daughter of the Supreme Buddha am I. Go ahead and cut me or kill me. Right? So this is her full faith. And apparently she uttered 500 such verses. And as I said, they are called Dhananjani Gajita, Dhananjani's thunder. So it is a very beautiful, inspiring story about this woman of great faith. Now notice she calls herself daughter of the Buddha. So we hear the monks sometimes saying that they are sons of the Buddha. This has caused a bit of confusion because I read somewhere, we know, according to the stories, the Buddha has only one son, Rahula. Some researchers have found at least 3 other monks saying, I'm the son of the Buddha, in the sense that it sounds as if that Buddha is the biological father. But so this writer said, it appears that the Buddha has got 4 sons, But actually, it's not the case. This is just a figure of speech. The Buddha is responding to the Brahmin ideology, because the Brahmins say, we are born from the mouth of God, we are born from the top of the head of God, that kind of idea, or from the chest of God, and so on. This idea that the Brahmins were upper class, they are born from the upper part of the Supreme Being. This is the ultimate superstitious ideology of dominating others, which today, of course, nobody would believe. So here, what the Buddha does, he uses a method which I call natural adaptation. Okay, in other words, he naturally adapts. He uses this very same idea. Say, if the Brahmins say they're born from the mouth of God and so on, you can say you're born from the Buddha's, born from the Buddha. You are the Buddha's son. You are my child, in the sense of the Dharma. So the common people will normally address the Buddhist monks as the Sakya sons. The Sakya sons refer to the monks. But when they say the son of the Sakya, they refer to the Buddha. So these are terms we sometimes see being used in the suttas and commentaries. Okay? So this gives us a deeper, more personal feel to the story of the Buddha.
Is it found in the sutta?
I suppose so. daughters of the Sakya, so we refer to the nuns. So the nuns use this word to have a close connection to the Buddha, and also to remind others that women are equally spiritual. They can also attain the same awakening as the men. Okay, I think, and this is important to understand. I think we never have this problem of spiritual inequality. Once you talk about the path, there's no such thing as sexuality, because it doesn't matter you're a man or a woman. The Bodhisattva, in a sense, the Buddha are beyond sexuality. The Arahat is beyond sexuality. When you meditate, you go to the level of the mind. And in the spiritual mind, it's neither male nor female, because male and female are regarded as physical aspects, physical attributes of humanity. So we rise beyond that. Of course, in societies where women are demeaned and women are kind of have a lot of problems, I think we need to remind ourselves to make sure that they are treated properly and so on. And the women in the West go through a lot of difficulties to win, in a sense, equality with the men. But I think equality has been overrated, because you can be equal, but you can be unfair. Let's say the Ministry of Sports say, okay, from today onwards, everyone is equal. Anyone can enter the Olympics, including you and I. If you and I enter the Olympics, you'll never have a chance. You see what I mean? So equality doesn't mean justice, You got to train yourself. Yeah, in a sense, it's fair. Anyone can technically sign up for the Olympics, but whether you're of that standard or not is another matter. My point here is talking about sexual equality is one thing, but when we talk about being fair to the sexes, another. Justice is another. When the rules were made for the nuns, for example, it's not that the monks or the Buddha was unjust to them. For example, nuns were not allowed to live alone in the forest, because they were vulnerable to other people, to other men who came and raped them and did all sorts of created all sorts of problems for them. So to that extent, they had to be protected too. We cannot deny there are biological differences, even psychological differences between men and women, but there is no spiritual difference in a sense. And the fact that the Buddha technically is always a man is more of a social convention than anything else, because the society into which the Buddha was born is man-dominated at that time, when you have that kind of culture, the patriarchy and so on. But when we talk about awakening, we didn't talk about it in terms of male or female. Okay, so that's a bit by way of introduction. Let's look at the sutta, page 50, the Brāhmiṇī Dhananjani discourse, S7.1. Thus have I heard. The Blessed One was once staying in the squirrel's feeding ground in the bamboo grove near Rajgaha. Okay, so here the scene is Rajgaha. Rajgaha is probably the largest town in ancient India, the capital of Magadha. Magadha is the kingdom that Bimbisara started. Actually, it is called Anga Magadha. And this is the kingdom that is the mothers of all Indian empires, if you like. In a sense, the ability of Ashoka to build this huge empire, the biggest Indian empire ever, goes back to the time of Bimbisara. Bimbisara married the sister of King Pasenadi of Kosala, which is the other big kingdom, so they don't have to go to war. So as this ally with this big nation next to Magadha. And then he conquers Anga. Anga is a small country, if you like. So he conquers Anga. And so that way you have this huge, big, sprawling area, so people can travel Anga, Magadha, Kosala, and since the other countries also are not at war, so there is this great peace governing the whole of Central Gangetic Plain. And in many ways, this made the country, made that area powerful, and there was iron also being used. And Bimbisara was very clever, also he controlled the river trade, the Ganges and so on. So because of all this, he built this really great empire. You begin to see some of this quality even in the suttas. For example, now I'm working on the miraculous life of Gautama Buddha, but in between you get some very interesting historical aspects, insights into early Buddhism. For example, I was writing, explaining the meeting between the Bodhisattva, the newly renowned Siddhartha, and the young king Bimbisara. I thought he was a prince at one time, but then when I did my research, apparently he became king only at 15. His father probably abdicated and made him king. So he became king very young. And at the time he met the Buddha, he was already king. That's my understanding. And he's also said to be 5 years younger than the Buddha. So the Buddha left home, the Buddha became a renunciant at 29. So minus 5, so King Bimbisara would be 24. He was already king for like 9 years. So this King Bimbisara, he is on the top of his palace terrace, alliteration, huh? So the terrace of the palace, it's easier to pronounce. So he was there kind of relaxing, and he saw this interesting young figure walking. He's a mendicant, he's a monk. But then the way he walks is very different. He's a royal. It easily takes a king to recognize another king, so to speak, a royal to recognize another royal. So he was at once curious, so he sent his men down to follow that monk, okay? So they followed him, and then in the end, well, they met. And he questioned him, and then he began to know that actually he's from Sakya country. According to some sources, Bimbisara and Siddhartha were childhood friends. So if that's the case, then it explains a very interesting situation in the Bharadvaja Sutta. The Bharadvaja Sutta is a very ancient sutta which describes the meeting between these two people, and Bimbisara offering Siddhartha not his kingdom, as sometimes some people say, offer him to be commander-in-chief of his army, to support him, to pay him, basically to be his assistant. The army commander-in-chief is the one who controls the army, so he needs to be a very trusted person. So obviously you don't pick someone on the street and say, hey, you come to me, be my commander, and I'll support you. So the fact that they knew each other even as children, I think makes good sense. But of course, and moreover, they are both the Kshatriyas. They're both of the ruling class. So Siddhartha, our future Buddha, was not too keen as well, I decided to find the truth. And the king, of course, accepted that. He says, well, in that case, can you please promise, when you have found Buddhahood, make your first stop Rajagaha, come back to Rajagaha. Okay, so Rajagaha is this big, important city, and the Bodhisattva also, when he renounced the world, he first went to Rajagaha to look for alms, because that's the... Rajagaha is the capital of Magadha. Okay, so he goes to Rajagaha to collect alms, and he was noticed there. Right? So that's Rajagaha, the biggest city of ancient India at the time. Right, let's continue with the story. At that time, the Brahmini named Dhananjani, the wife of a certain brahmin of the Bharadvaja clan, was deeply faithful in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. She's a Strimana, if you remember. So these three minerals, they have very deep faith in the three jewels. Okay. Now, while the brahmini Dhananjani was bringing the brahmin his meal, she stumbled. All right. So here, the brahmini brings the brahmin his meal. It's a very interesting arrangement, very patriarchal. The brahmin eats alone like a lord, okay, and he's served by his wife. The wife will be there, putting his food for him and so on. So this is the brahmin way. So the brahmini serves the brahmin, the husband, and then she stumbled and uttered this udana, or inspired utterance. Okay, Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to him, the Lord or the Blessed One, the Arahat, the worthy, the fully self-awakened one. Right? So of course you must have recited this very fast. Okay, and she recites this 3 times. And when this was said, the Brahmin of the Bharadvaja clan said this to her. Notice the name is not mentioned, just says the Brahmin of the Bharadvaja class. For just merely this, you outcast of a woman, utters praise to that shriveling. Now, you outcast of a woman, I will refute the word of that teacher of yours. Okay, very strong words, no? So the husband, very angry with the husband, calls her an outcast, a vasala, okay? Which also translates as wretched, you wretched woman. Okay? He says, how can you praise that shriveling? Yeah? Locally we use the word botak, so how can you shave that shriveling? So he's very angry. So he says, I'm going to see the Buddha, I'm going to knock him down with some funny questions. Okay? So this is a very interesting situation, a challenge, so to speak. Then the Brahmini replies, the woman replies, I do not see anyone, Brahmin, in this world with its gods and its Mara, with its Brahma, this generation with its recluses and Brahmins, its rulers and people, who could refute the teaching of the Blessed One, the Arahat, the fully self-awakened one. But go, Brahmin. After you have gone, you will understand. Okay, here notice the Brahmin did not stop the husband. He said, no, go. I don't think you can defeat him. So that's kind of even challenging him even more, making him want to go even more, all right? Because he knows just meeting the Buddha is good enough. Something will happen. People will change. Then the Brahmin of the Bharadvaja clan, angry and displeased, approached the Blessed One and exchanged greetings with him. Notice, even though he was angry, he's still civil. Somehow when they meet people of the higher classes, there is this code, you have to be civil to each other. So he was very civil and greeted each other with friendly greetings. And when this was concluded, he sat down at one side. Seated thus at one side, the Brahmin of the Bharadvaja clan addressed the Blessed One in verse. Okay, so this is the question. This is the starting of the sutta. King suchetva sukang seti, king suchetva naso chati, kissasu eka dhammasa, vadan rocheti gotamati. Having slain what does one sleep happily? Having slain what does one not sorrow? What is that one thing, O Gotama, whose killing you approve of? Now this is quite opposite of what normally we hear of the Buddha. So he's asking a trick question, or a double pointed question even. So he's saying, the Buddha said don't kill, right? But here it says killing what is good. Purposely just, make it the opposite. And the Buddha's reply, the next 6 lines, totally changed him. The Buddha replies, Kodam cetva sukang seti, kodam cetva naso chati, kodasa visa mulasa, madhuragasa brahmana, vadang arya pasangsanti, Tanhi cetva naso chati ti. Having slain anger, one sleeps happily. Having slain anger, one sorrows not. Anger with its poisonous root, and honeyed shoot, O Brahmin, they are killing the noble one's praise. For having slain them, one sorrows not. So the Buddha's reply is very simple. He says, killing anger is good. All right? Then what happens? See, the sutta actually ends here. The conclusion says, when this was said, the Brahmin of the Bharadvaja clan said this to the Blessed One, "Excellent Master Gotama, excellent Master Gotama," just as if one were to place upright what had been overturned, or were to reveal what was hidden, were to show the way to one who was lost, or were to hold up a lamp in the dark so that those with eyes could see forms. In the same way, in numerous ways, the Dhamma been made clear by the Blessed One. I go to the Blessed Gotama for refuge, to the Dhamma and to the community of monks. May the Blessed One give me the going forth, give me the ordination. Okay, so he decides to renounce the world just like that. So this is quite amazing. There's nothing miraculous here. It's just a simple line that basically you can summarize the teachings as killing anger is good. The Bharadvaja clan is a very special group of people in the Buddha's time. In fact, there were, if any clan had produced the greatest number of arhats, you can say one of them is the Bharadvaja clan. There's so many arhats who have the family name of Bharadvaja, the clan of Bharadvaja. And there's a group of them who are brothers, so this is one of them. So, in other words, this group of people, they were ready. They just need to hear a certain teaching and then they just open up, so to speak. Even today, you find among the English-speaking group, for example, you find people easily responding to the Buddha's teaching. Of course, there are good books, but then they also love meditation. So they are able to respond just like that, and many of them will become monks. So this Bharadvaja is one of them. After all, his wife, is also a stream winner. So this is where one way to explain this is they have been hearing the Dhamma very regularly at one time in their past life, perhaps. So in our case too, we should build up this habit of loving the suttas, loving the Dhamma. Now, as you know, I'm working on the miraculous life of Gautama Buddha, which has reached 110 pages now. So I think it probably formed the whole volume of ST 52.1, just one title. Actually, originally it was one of some 15 suttas, I think, but this one is one essay. Because this topic is so important, and we're talking about all the miracles in the life of the Buddha from the time he was in Tusita, came down, and then up to his awakening. That part of his life is full of miraculous stories, very hard to explain, embarrassing to a lot of so-called modern Buddhists. And they don't tell the stories anymore, it's going to be forgotten, or worse, it's going to be misinterpreted. So I thought it's time to look at the stories in detail and then explain them in a modern sense. I use the approach of the psychology of mythology, psychology of myths, if you like. In other words, the myths of the story about mental cultivation, they reflect the nature of our minds and so on. And I never thought I could write so much. I thought maybe 20 pages would be enough, but now it's already 110 pages. And that's hardly 2/3, so you probably end up with a whole volume, 180 pages. Anyway, my point is this, I've got a couple of really remarkable proofreaders who are very good proofreaders. So one of them, she has finished all this important suttas, the latest volume. And this one was a rare occasion when I decided to let her proofread the earlier part of what I'm writing right now. And that also helps me to update it right away. So I'll just take sections of it, about 10 to 15 pages each time. So I've so far sent up to 5 parts for her to read, more than 50 pages. Now, she's a very fast proofreader, this person. She would just take like 1 or 2 days on it just to read 10 pages. She says, because she said, hey, what happened next? I want to know what happened next. So she just kind of said, this is really interesting, this is amazing, and I never thought it would be so interesting. How long did you take to write this? So I told her, I said, well, if you talk about the number of pages, maybe 5-10 pages a week, conservatively. But to plan all this thing, I took 50 years. I mean, it's something I've been reading and studying since I was a teenager. One of the first things I read about Buddhism was Life of the Buddha when I was a young boy. So now things are really clear. We have all the texts and commentaries and suttas. So my approach is always that of faith. I don't think there is anything to debunk. Yeah, sometimes in the commentary you may get some rather outrageous statements or things which are difficult to accept today, which are opinions of the commentators. But when you hear the famous stories of the Buddha, like for example, when he was born, he stood up and he walked 7 steps and then he uttered something. Now, that kind of story is found in the commentaries and also in the suttas. And then later on, these stories get elaborated. For example, in the Sanskrit versions, they were not satisfied with the fact he just took 7 steps and then put up his hand and said, "Agua mas milokasa." So I said, he went in all the 4 directions, and each direction he said something, and so on. So it became more and more elaborate as the centuries passed. And one of the most elaborate new version, or you can say a revised version of the life of the Buddha, is from the Buddha Charita, a epic Sanskrit poem written by Ashwagosha. Now, Ashwagosha is the court poet of King Kanishka of the Kushans. Now, if you study Buddhist history very carefully, the moment you mention Kushans and Kanishka, you know, Mahayana. So he was a promoter of Mahayana. Now, he is a king, see, so he needs some kind of ideology that would unify the people. So Mahayana Buddhism was a very good candidate, so he promoted Mahayana Buddhism. And this Ashwagosha, he was a Brahmin, then he debated with another Buddhist and he was convinced, apparently he converted, he became a monk, so the story goes. And then he wrote this Buddha Charita, which actually means life of the Buddha story. His idea was to give as complete a story of the Buddha as possible, because up to that time there was no complete narrative of the Buddha. Okay, but the Buddha was not in the habit of telling about his life story. So he had to, in other words, fabricate some of the missing parts. Apparently he's the one, because he's dealing with emperors and kings, he's the one who gave us the impression that Suddhodana was a king and Siddhartha was a prince, as we often know today. But the truth is far from that. So this is the workings of Ashwagosha. He wrote the Buddha Charita actually for his own good, so that the people look up to him, say, wow, he's a great poet, and so on, right? To impress the king and so on. If you look at the life of Suddhodana and the Sakyas, they may be called Raja, yes, but we today translate Raja as king. But there are, from my understanding, 2 ways you can translate Raja in the history of early Buddhist India. Okay, the word Raja comes from the verb ranjati, one who delights. So the Raja is one who delights the people. His task is to make sure everyone is happy. So that's the idea of kingship in Buddha's time. The Kshatriyas were often called Rajas. So in that sense, you can say it means something just like chief, one who makes the people happy, right? So Kshatriya Raja. He's not like the absolute monarchs of the kingdoms. The Raja, R-A-J-J-A, those are the kingdoms. So the Sakyas, they were republicans. They have chiefs. So Suddhodana is one of those leading chiefs. There are a few others. So they take turns. They get elected and then they kind of become rulers. Some people call this an oligarchy, the rule of the few. So these are the few powerful families and they rule the Sakyas. So this was the arrangement. They were not kings. Another interesting point you must know about the Sakyas, they were in the outlying areas. The Sakyas were located at the foothill of the Himalayas, somewhere between India and Nepal, overlapping area there. The kingdoms were in the heart of central Gangetic plain, especially Magadha and Kosala. It was a time these kingdoms were rising. They were conquering all these republics and small little kingdoms here and there. Now, the Sakyas were to some extent safe, in a sense, through what's called state marriage. King Pasenadi, who has great respect for the Buddha, so the Buddhist stories tell us, asked for a Sakya daughter to marry, and he was given Vasabhakatiya, one of the, secretly actually was a slave girl of Mahanama, but Mahanama claims a daughter, because the Sakyas were very strongly endogamic, meaning they wanted to preserve the Sakya stock, so no one among the Sakyas would marry someone outside who's not a Sakya. So this is called Katya Mana, the arrogance of the royal class. You don't marry outside the royal class. But you see all these things crumbling away now, you know. Prince Harry of England is marrying a commoner and so on. And I think the brother also married a commoner, isn't it? So you begin to see kind of a new development nowadays. Okay. I think he was a Kshatriya. Yeah, because he told the Buddha, "You're a Kshatriya, I'm also a Kshatriya," you know. So these kingdoms were rising, and so instead of conquering the Sakyas, Pasenadi marries the Sakya princess. So he thought, yeah. And to that extent, Sakya became a kind of like a tributary, a vessel of the kingdom. So they protected. So you can say you have, on one side, you have Magadha, Anga, allied with Kosala. And here you have Kosala plus Sakya and other small kingdoms. So the republics like the Vajis and so on, they were all losing out. And by the time the Buddha passed away, after the Buddha passed away, you remember Ajasattu conquered the Vajis. Right? So the Indian Empire began to be built in the Buddha's time. So the point here is that it was a time of kings. Right? Okay, so there's a bit of extra information for you. So coming back to the sutta, you see here this Bharadvaja renouncing the world, and then he takes leave to meditate. 11. Then, not long after he was ordained, the Venerable Bharadvaja. So they all call Venerable Bharadvajas. Okay, but there are quite a number of them. I think nearly a dozen now. Dwelling alone, aloof, diligent, exertive, and resolute, in no long time at all, right here and now, having realized for himself thoroughly, through direct knowledge, attain and dwell in the supreme goal of the holy life. for the sake of which sons of family rightly go forth from the household life into homelessness. He that rightly knew birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived, done what is to be done, there is no more of this state of being, no more rebirth. And the Venerable Bharadvaja became one of the Arahats. So there you are, a very short story. Husband angry with wife, wife is a devout Buddhist, a streamer. Husband challenges wife, I'll knock down your teacher. Wife said, go ahead and try. He goes and meets the Buddha and asks a trick question. The Buddha answers a trick question, and the Brahmin basically says, wow, and he becomes a monk. He says, okay, you are right, I might as well join you. Something triggered it. This is almost a kind of traumatic experience, if you like. You remember, Prince Siddhartha was shielded by his father. So he did not see an old man, a sick man, and a dead man the way we do. Now, I'm sure as a young man, because he left home at 29, imagine those 29 years, he must surely have seen at least his playmate, his pets, animals or what growing old, and surely they must have died, It's just that it was no big deal, because he was a royalty, he was a chief's son, so things were easy for him. And then I think what made him even more sensitive to what he saw in the foresights was the father flooding him with pleasure. In psychology, we used to flooding, all these worldly pleasures, Because once you got flooded, the problem with flooding is that you surfeit of it, you satiate with it, you get sick of it because it's so easily available. In the end, is that all, So imagine this young man who sees all this, every day he has this beautiful women, good food, nice place, all these pleasures, Moments you come back you don't even have to put on your CD or what. These women, live women, will sing for you, So when you saw an old man, he was shocked. And the story goes that the Forsyths, they were no ordinary human beings. The Devas in Tusita, they were like these aliens monitoring the progress of the Bodhisattva on earth. Say, okay, it's time for him to see the Forsyths. And then a Deva Putra, a young Deva, comes down, and either he transforms himself into an old man or he projects this image, a hologram image of this very old man. It is described in beautiful A-level English, all these qualities of an old man. And we are told Siddhartha doesn't know what an old man is. You're talking about this most intelligent man. He sees an old man, doesn't know. He has to ask Channa, what kind of man is this? And Channa, who is his groom, his charioteer, the horse groom, he takes care of the horse. Channa is the commentator. Okay? So obviously Channa knows more about all these things than the prince or the chief's son. So he's the one he's the sort of narrator telling Siddhartha what an old man is, the consequences. He said, well, old means as the years pass, that's what you'll become, your skin will shrivel and so on and so forth. And then the prince said, wow, you mean I'll be like that? And he says, my family like that, my wife like that? And that kind of was shocking to him, that he was intoxicated with youth, So because every day he sees all these young, beautiful people. This is the myth. This is why this work I'm doing is very interesting. This is the myth. So imagine he sees all these young people. Obviously, certain people were growing old. For example, his father definitely was growing old. So he must have seen his father growing old, right? But it is not in such a traumatic way. Okay, so he sees this old man, and then so that there are two versions of these four signs. It is said that for those Buddhas like Vipassana Buddha, whose lifespans are very long, Vipassana Buddha's lifespan I think is 80,000 years. So they would see the four sights every 100 years. They'll see it once. Here, if you are a quantum physicist, you probably nod your head and say that makes sense. because the time is like slower for those whose lifespan are 80,000 years. So they see one side every century or 100 years. Whereas in the case of our Buddha, his lifespan is only 100 years. Okay, when humans lifespan 100 years, which is regarded as short, he sees all the four sides in one day. All right, during different times of the day as it toured around the city. So then the Devas Sutta says, okay, now it's time for him to see the second side, third side, and fourth side. So when you see all these four visions, it was a shock to him. So in other words, what the storytellers want us to impress on us is that these four sides, they are like epiphanies. Epiphanies is sudden appearance of reality before the young, this youthful Siddhartha. In other words, he realizes that everything he has will be lost. So this is what terrified this young prince or young chief's son, Siddhartha. He suddenly realized all these pleasures his father has given him, all this wealth, even his power will be lost because of the three sides. And then he sees the fourth side. Now the first three sides, an old man, sick man, dead man, represents the three great evils, or the three bads, if you like. Decay, disease, death. It makes you lose everything that you have. So then he's a very deeply questioning young man. He says, okay, in that case, what's the point of me having anything? All will be lost. So he's the kind of very intelligent person, right? And then he saw the fourth side. Now, the fourth side is a category by itself, because the first three sides arouse what is called samvega in this young man. Samvega, one convenient translation in modern psychological language is trauma. Spiritual trauma, if you like. It shocked him, because all his life he's seeing beauty, youth, and all this pleasure, and suddenly he sees just the opposite, so real to him. It's like someone going to war and see people die, and you see actually seeing people kill and die and explode before you. It's traumatic. So to him, the first three sides were traumatic, shocking. All right, so he did not know what to do. Then he saw the fourth side. The fourth side is soothing. The fourth side makes him feel at peace with himself, because it's the answer. Then he asked Channa, what is this? Why is this person so different? And Channa said, well, he's a renunciant, he's a Pabajita. There's something very interesting the commentator tells us, unlike in the case of the previous three sides, old man, sick man, dead man, Channa doesn't know. He doesn't really know what this fourth side is. Okay, he's never seen a holy man, because remember he is as young as he's about the same age as Siddhartha, and his playmate. I mean his companion. So he doesn't know what the holy man is. So the commentator tells us, even though he does not know, that the gods were there to guide him, to tell him what to say. Okay, so he knew what to say. Say, oh, this is called Pabajita. This is called a renunciant. Okay, so this is the myth. Remember, this is the myth, right? So then, of course, the prince listened, or Siddhartha listens, and he said, "Wow, this is great. This is what I want. This is what I need. I want to be happy." So the hallmark of the previous three sides is samvega. Whereas this last side, it is pasada. Pasada means a joyful faith, joyful confidence, because you have found the answer. So this is what he was looking for, this joyful answer. Now, okay, I said the word myth. Less people misunderstand that, these are just frivolous stories which are not important. On the contrary, whenever I say myth, especially a Buddhist myth, to me it is one of the most important aspects of Buddhist literature. Without the myths, you will not happily understand the facts. Okay. A myth, according to Buddhist psychology or Buddhist life of the Buddha, or Buddhist hagiology, we say, is a kind of cosmic dramatization of some basic truth in life. And you find every great culture have got their myths. And some of the greatest myths are found in Greek mythology. Right? So sometimes I find the Greek mythology very helpful in explaining the Buddhist myths. So that is why it's a very interesting study. I've always been interested in mythology. I remember as a kid I used to read all those stories of the Greek heroes. So you find the Greeks often have this, they make use of the samsaric cycle in their stories of their heroes and their villains. Okay, we do have the samsaric cycle in Buddhism, but in the Buddhist myth you see more of an ending of problems. So Siddhartha sees the foresight, he's going to do something which will solve some big problems. So in a sense the Indian myths are more positive, they are more teleological. In other words, they have this very happy goal, unlike the Greek myth. The Greek myths are more samsaric, whereas the Buddhist myths are more nibbanic, if you like, nirvanic. In other words, in the case of the Greek myth, it is the gods punishing humans who try to be godlike. For example, you have this king called Sisyphus, who dared to cheat the gods, by pretending to be someone else. So that the gods apparently were not very bright. They couldn't catch him. So he lived for a long time beyond his lifespan, and they couldn't catch him. So they sent, how shall we say, some gods out to look for him, to nab him, because when they check the records, they say, how come this guy, he's still around, he's supposed to be dead, I mean, this is a Greek mythology, okay? So they got this man to go to the river and wash charcoal, washing. And Sisyphus comes along and says, what are you doing? And the man said, well, you can see what I'm doing, I'm trying to wash this charcoal. He said, why are you washing it? Well, I want to wash it white. I want to wash this charcoal white. And this is where Sisyphus and his big mouth got into trouble. Okay, he says, in all my long, how many hundred of years of life, I've never seen anyone so silly as you to wash charcoal white. You can't do that. And that got him into trouble. Then they found him. Okay, so they said, Sissy, we got caught. And of course, Zeus is not a very pleasant god. He says, well, okay, you tried to cheat us, we're going to punish you. So they punish him, and they actually mock him. They make him push this round boulder uphill. And you know how heavy, difficult it is to push a big rock uphill. Now remember, once you are punished in that way, you are not really human anymore. You become godlike. You have this strength. You can push this boulder up. And yeah, maybe you're tired, but you regain strength overnight. So he pushes this big boulder up this hill, big hill. I mean, even if you push up Bukit Timah or Mount Faber, it's quite a feat. I mean, you try climbing these two hills in a weekend, it's quite a feat for many of us. So he pushes this rock up the hill, he reaches the top, and he rolls down again, and he runs after the rock. And then it settles down in the valley, he goes down there, and he pushes it up again. And it goes on like that, up, down, and he runs after the rock. Now, why does he do this? Obviously, he finds this enjoyable. So imagine, so this is a bit of Buddhist teaching comes in. Sisyphus sees the rock, he sees like his ambition. So, and to him, pushing up is like, wow, you're getting all these things you're looking for in life, that you're building up your wealth and so on. And then he goes down again, you lose all your wealth. But then you run after it, and you catch the rock again, and you push it up again, you're getting rich again, you're getting powerful again, you're getting all your pleasures again. So it goes up and down, endlessly. So this is a samsaric theme in Buddhist, in Greek mythology. This is how the gods punish humans. And you see this cycle in many other stories. Okay, even the story of Prometheus, for example. Okay, Prometheus, he was one of those titans, but he was a good titan who kind of was compassionate towards humans. We're talking about this dark age, really dark, literally, when humans had no fire. The story went that actually at one time men had discovered fire, but Zeus took it away from the man, because Zeus he likes to see humans totally under his power, so to speak, just worshipping him and so on. So humans had no fire, so you can imagine how difficult it was for them. So Prometheus, one day, while Zeus was sleeping happily with his favorites, stole some fire from Zeus' thunder, and he went down to earth and gave fire to humans, and the humans got fire. Of course, nothing is hidden from the eye of Zeus. Zeus was told it was Prometheus who gave fire to humans. So he got Prometheus seized. Now you can't kill a demigod. Prometheus was a demigod, a titan, like an asura. It's actually the same category, asura in the Pali mythology. So what Zeus did was, he got Prometheus chained to some rocks. Some people say it was the rock of Gibraltar, okay? So he got chained. All these things happen around the Mediterranean and the kind of area, okay? So he was chained to this rock, right? And every morning this huge big eagle will come, tear his body open, and eat his liver, just his liver only. And since he's a titan, he doesn't die. So can you imagine the suffering he goes through? And then he suffers the whole day. Nightfall, he begins to recover. By dawn, he's totally recovered. And here comes the eagle again. Tear him open, eats his liver. He suffers the whole day, like a preta. So in a sense, you might say, it's like a preta. So this is how the gods punish humans, by making them go through this cyclic suffering. But in Buddhist mythology, you see the cyclic suffering, yes, but the story is always about the way out. That's the big difference. So that's why Buddhist mythology is very interesting when it is in connection with the life of the Buddha. Okay. All right. So that's a kind of mixture of two. We have two parallel lessons today on the sutta as well as the Buddhist psychology of mythology. All right. Question time.
In the life of Buddha, do all the Buddhas see the four sides?
Yes, apparently they do. They all see the four sides. Yeah.
So if that's the case, you can say that, can you say that they're fated to be Buddha or something like that?
In a sense, yeah. In a sense, in a loose way of talking. But no one controls their fate. You see, the gods are there. It's almost like as if the gods are pulling the strings, but not so. The gods are more like, what should we say? They're like some kind of government officers, officials, or they're like those who are running the train networks, So they look at the timetable and say, okay, now this is what to do, this is what to do, So the gods in Sutta, for example, they have not much power really. They are one of the lower sense world heavens. So they just know, that the time of the Bodhisattva is reaching an end in Sutta. So they come in a big gathering, almost like a celebration to send him off. So they announce him, they say, well, your time has come for you to descend to earth, to be reborn, your last birth, not to be Buddha. Remember, this is mythology, it's not history. So in a sense, you can say it is fate, but it's not fatalism. That is why it is easier to use mythology. It shows a cycle of human evolution. It means that somehow humans can evolve spiritually to awaken and become Buddha. We begin to understand our true nature. Of course, if you talk like that, not many people will listen. Scholars, maybe people like us, People in the street say, oh, it's boring, But you just say, oh, he comes down from Tusita, and then he sits in meditation in his mother's womb, and then the mother dies after 7 days, and then she walks, 7 steps. Oh, they love to listen to that, because if you don't tell the stories, it's not a story to them. Because it was a time without any. Today we have mass media. We have so many. We have what do you call it? Effects. movie effects, right? We all love those effects. We are watching those same depictions today as in the Buddha's time. In a sense, the Buddha's time was very simple, very literary, but now it is electronic. So we need that kind of mythical representation of the basic facts, right? It's just a matter of time, Next generation, maybe you hear mythical stories about LKY, maybe, we don't know, because we are still in the phase of creating myths, in Singapore stories. So yes, to some extent you can say, I wouldn't say a fate, like a cycle. And moreover, it makes sense, because how would the Buddha renounce the world? He sees the four sides. What are the four sides? The four sides is a mythical way of talking. What really troubles us as human beings? Decay, disease, death. Now if you say, okay, he saw the manifestations of decay, disease, death, and then he struggled to awaken himself, to free himself from suffering. I mean, it's not very interesting, is it? But you say he's an old man, a very old man, and he was shocked. Then you find this is a dramatization of this very important story, the most important story to us. So this is a literary aspect of Buddhism, which is very important. Buddhism is literature. So this is the myth of the Buddha's life story. But once the Buddha awakens, you find there are less of such stories. Less, okay? More teachings. That's why I decided that to study this one section by itself. An often neglected part of the life of the Buddha. Okay?
Appeal to people's feeling first. Once they're attracted to it, then we give them the teaching.
Yeah, in a sense. Feeling, creative aspects.
So you have written now 100 over pages.
110.
Expect to be about 200 pages.
Probably 180, I think. About 180, maybe less. I don't know, I keep saying less, usually it's more. So I'm now working on the Lady Sujata offering the last meal to the Bodhisattva before his awakening. So in other words, I will relate whatever the commentaries say, word for word if possible, and then I will explain why. Then I will relate to the suttas, what the Buddha himself actually said, and then try to explain what it means to us today. Okay. The book is targeted to be ready by March, so I have quite a lot of time. It happened by accident, by all these things. I'm very happy that actually happened.
Did you find?
Look at the Buddhist story. There is mythology, but the mythology is still very cogent, very very connected with whatever we're talking about in Buddhism. But somehow in Christianity, things went haywire after that. People started adding, because of politics, because it's a normal religion. The rulers were trying to say, how do we control the masses? One way is introducing festivals. The festival very popular. It's like, the church taking over Chinese New Year and say, now we celebrate God, Whereas in Buddhism, you find it's the other way around. The emperor says, we use Buddhism. So anyway, so this is where you can see the power of mythology. Okay, it's being used to control minds. But in Buddhism, mythology is used to free the mind. That is the difference. That is why, as I said, this work to me is very important, and I don't see anyone who's done this kind of approach before. I mean, there were very great classics, the scholars who are very sincere, not those scholars who try to just make money with Buddhism and then after that go into their gardens when they retire. One of them was Fauché, I think it's Albert Fauché, he's a French, he wrote his work in French. So he took the story of the Buddha just as it is. He says, I'm going to present the story of the Buddha just as it is. No edicting, no bowdlerizing. And then later you have the second great scholar, one of the greatest of the Victorian scholars, Buddhist scholars, called E.J. Thomas. His Life of the Buddha, written around the time when I was born, I think it was 49. The book is still a classic today because the way he writes is really ahead of his time. E.J. Thomas, Life of the Buddha as legend and history. Of course, his work is today we say is dated because it's useful to me. It's just that certain sections he could have elaborated, but his work is still helpful and quite remarkable for his time. So, and there is this Japanese scholar called Nakamura who tries to see the Buddha as a historical figure. So you find it is in the spirit of all these scholars who present the life of the Buddha in a way we can appreciate. So I'm putting all this work together plus my understanding and something. Important thing is I enjoy writing it. That is why I want to do it. And then it's also useful. So mythology is the aspect of humans where we live with this dream, and this dream guides us onwards towards greater happiness. That was what made the Buddha leave home and to find the answer. He was like a hero living home. So to be a hero, you have to leave something precious behind. You got to go through all kinds of struggle and challenges, even nearly dying, nearly being killed. And then you find the answer, and then you celebrate, Vesak Day. So that's a beautiful Buddhist myth in that sense. A story which is larger than life. And that's one simple definition I use for myth. A story which is larger than life. In other words, it's not true for me alone. It's true for all generations, all the time. It crosses the border of time and space, in other words. So that's the power of myth. Even today, you look at the Greek myth, you find we can still appreciate many of the Greek myths. Right? So that's why the Buddhist myths are really wonderful in that sense. So just wait till March. Chinese New Year present for you all. It should be ready by then. Okay, that's nice. Any last? Sorry?
One question.
Yeah, question.
This Brahmini, she stumbled and then she will always utter this Namo Tassa.
Mm-hmm.
Is she hysteria?
Oh, okay, yeah. I think I wrote a note on that. Locally, not so much in Singapore. Singapore Malays are quite modernized. But the traditional Malays of Malaysia, I suppose traditional Malay of Singapore, you might see a feature. It's called Latah. I wonder if you've heard of it. Latah, Latah. This person, especially adults, men also may do it, but if the men do it, they're a little effeminate, Latah means to utter usually utter profanities, some really terrible words. If they get shocked or frightened, and they will say, the most common we say in Baba language, we say, opocho, opocho. Whether you heard of that or not? Okay, opocho, that's called Latah. That has been translated by Westerners as Arctic hysteria. In the case of the Brāhmiṇī Dhananjani, I don't think it is Arctic hysteria because she only says Namo Tassa, not profanities. Because this Arctic hysteria, Latah, they will just say something strange, and then whatever you say, they will repeat after you. And this is what we used to make fun of them. We will say some nasty style, she also will repeat. Usually it's a she.
You mean they are not controllable?
No, they will just repeat what you say. The last few words, like a turkey, gobble, gobble. So that is Latah. So in this case, it's not Latah. It's just a kind of, it's a reaction, yes, but it's a reaction of faith. So, you can say broadly, same category, but they are different things.
Just like some people say, oh my God, something like that.
That's the other thing. Cultural dominance again.
Yeah,
see?
then we'll say, oh, Buddha.
Yeah, in Thailand, that's what they say. In Thailand, they say, to, you must say lap to, okay? That is the ending part, buddho, so they say to. So they cut it down to one word, you see. So they don't say God. No, but we are English educated. So, and we keep hearing all this thing, we watch TV, so we also get caught up with that. Even some Dhamma teachers are suddenly some strange situation, they would say the same words. So this is part of cultural domination. So of course the day will come when we are more mature and we know what to do, what not to do. Okay, so we end for today's lesson. This is the very dramatic end of your study. All right. As the year closes, let us reflect on how we have been gathering here like pilgrims every second Sunday, every other Sunday, to study the suttas so that we can know better our own selves to live happier lives, more meaningful lives, more dignified lives in the Dharma, more as liberated beings in due course. And the suttas are about just that, self-knowledge, self-awakening. Reflecting in this way is very good karma. By the power of this karma, let us cultivate loving kindness towards ourselves for our own happiness, good health, and wisdom, so that we will attain awakening, at least stream winning in this life itself. By the same token, let us send out our loving kindness to all our loved ones, to those who have been kind and supportive of us, that they may be well and happy too. And also to those who are working hard here, people who come here seeking solace, may they be well and happy. And to those who are seeking the truth and having difficulties, may they find their way quickly to the true Dharma in this life itself. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So the next time we meet,